you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today with me, we have another rock star. We have the founder and CEO of FanFair, the one and only Micheal Ude. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan. Love the podcast. Love what you got going on. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into everything, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Micheal Ude. If you do know who I am, you probably know me by Micheal Chords, which is my official music name, which I do all my music under. But I am the founder and CEO of FanFair, which is a mobile application designed to help musicians grow their fan base.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about the musician. How'd you start off into music just as a kid, or how'd you get into music?
Yeah, actually, I've always been in the church, obviously, but my church was a totally different church than you would think about when you think about music. So I go to a predominantly white church. I'm not saying nothing on my white people out there. Y'all know I love y'all. But it was very old too. It was like congregational singing. There's no choir or anything like that. But my aunt came from a Southern Baptist church. And so they had like the choir and all the parts and all the little things. And she would come over to the house and she'd be singing these songs. And I'm like, I want to do the bass line of that. And I was like 6 and I sounded pretty terrible, but I would try to do the things that she did and just prayed about it, to pray that I have a really good voice to go forward and do that.
Awesome. So when you say you grew up in a different type of church, it's not like the mega type church that do like the full production? Because those, I've seen videos and it's almost like a full concert, right?
Bro, if I lean into like my church, you'd be like, yo, let's talk about that for the full time. Is it because it's so interesting and different? It's a smaller, so it's really large. There's all kinds of different churches, the same church, but all kinds of different locations across the country. But it's like super old, like think early Acts.
Really?
Like, everything operate almost mystic. You come to church and you're quiet. You wait for the Lord to tell you what to do. Yeah. But you're not like falling out, catching the spirit, grabbing snakes or nothing. But at the same time, it is very mystic. It's very much just kind of spirit led.
That's very cool. So outside of church, did you also like start experimenting with bands and stuff like that? You mentioned you have music out there too. So tell me about that.
So when I got older, I started playing and singing a lot with my friends. My friends were always great musicians and I was drawn to that, but writing has always been my thing since I was a kid. I would write. So lyricism is my thing. I would write for them and I'd say, let's sing this song. Okay. And so I got into that around 18, 19, got a lot more into it. And then 20, I started like releasing things and playing in different circuits in different places.
Awesome. If I were to say, hey, Micheal, what are your inspirations? What are your idols? What did you put on that list?
I definitely try to stay away from any idols, but when it comes to inspirations, I would say if like Ed Sheeran and like Leon Bridges and James Bay had a baby that rap sometimes, it would sound like me.
Nice. So if I'm hearing Ed Sheeran, is it because he does every instrument and full production type of thing, or are you more towards the voice?
His songwriting and maybe the indie acoustic folk style of music. It's kind of interesting because I say indie acoustic folk and you have like this thought, but then at the same time you slide in some like, I don't know, some Khalid in there or whatever, where my voice is more soulful than that style of music, but I like to rap a little bit in the middle of it too.
Have you seen the way that he sort of structures a song live where he's in concert? I mean, he basically doesn't need a band, right? Yeah. He's pretty amazing.
Dude, by far, I think the best, I'm going to get slavist, but the best musician of our generation, I think, is Ed Sheeran. Yeah? Yeah.
Man, you feel that deep about it.
Yeah. From a songwriting perspective and overall artistry and abilities perspective, he's head and shoulders.
Cool. So how would you describe your music? If somebody's like, hey, what type of vibe do you have? Or like, would you list a certain genre? Or like, how would you sort of categorize your music that you do?
Yeah, I would call it definitely indie acoustic, but then you got to add like pop, indie acoustic pop, right? You know, because it's got some of those elements in it as well. Kind of like a jambalaya, but that's probably the closest I would get to.
I see. And did you find yourself being an artist that you struggled with some things and that's kind of what led to the inspiration of FanFair? Or how do we get to FanFair going from artist to all of a sudden you're, entrepreneur?
That's an excellent question. Super good question. So it started out, I was playing in places and trying to do all the things that artists think that they should do, to make it happen. And I got in touch with a guy in Colorado. I was in Colorado at this time. This guy's name is Johnny Rockus. And at the time he was part of a group called Top Flight. And they were kind of like the premier band in Colorado doing their thing.
Okay.
And so I started recording a lot of things with him, and things took off really quickly from there. And I got in front of this A&R at Def Jam, and she informed me that it no longer matters how good you are. The only thing that matters now is how many fans you have on your respective social media websites.
Really? So even before they even consider you, they're going to check out your social, your following before they even talk to you.
Right. And this that I'm telling you right now was eight or 9 years ago. I mean, this was a long time ago. So it's like now you can tell how it's progressed.
For sure.
But it makes sense though, because at one level, anytime you get signed to a new label, it maybe one time it used to work where there's some nice silver-haired gentleman in the back that's waiting to give you a shot.
Like he's the one.
Right. That's where it used to work. But now they have to spend anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 to make sure you're marketable. You might sign an artist development deal, making sure that you're actually marketable and able to go and make that type of money. And so it's a really big gamble on their part. Why would they want to gamble if they could essentially, see somebody who's already trending, buzzing, somebody who can self-start to a level and then say, okay, let's throw resources at this and then duplicate.
Right. So what if I flip that? Why do I need you as a record label if I already have hundreds and thousands of followers and I've already built everything? Why do I need you?
You're saying things that make too much sense now. Yeah. That's kind of the whole premise. And I don't want to seem like that Fanfare was just like, oh, my brainchild. I was literally driving one day and by divine download, God was like, hey, if we're going to use social media to decide who gets a seat at the table, why don't you use social media to decide that everyone gets a seat at the table?
Right.
And so the whole concept of Fanfare came to my mind then, and it just never changed. There's never been a better time because of what has happened in technology and social media for artists to say, I think I'm gonna try it by myself and see what's happening.
Yeah, because traditionally there's gatekeepers, right? So let's dive into that for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the music industry, even Hollywood, right? Even it happens in movies too. Tell me a little bit about the history of gatekeepers and then how that worked compared to now, right?
Right. And so my journey is relatively short in comparison to other people's journey and how they've done things. I just happen to be here at a present time where music and tech have converged to the point of creating this beast that we have now.
Right.
So I might say some things that somebody who's been in the industry for 15, 20 years is like, he don't know what he's talking about, But I think for me, gatekeeping makes sense because I think it was like 2020, the music industry itself represented $15.5 billion in revenue, like in the US.
Yeah.
And as far as creators, content creators go, they saw less than 1% of that money. And so it's like, okay, who's getting paid? And so if the people that are getting paid are the people that perpetuate the music, that's why they get to choose and curate the sound. You ever been walking down the street and like hear some dude busking? You're like, oh man, he should be famous.
Right. All the time.
All the
right?
time.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. And that's because you as a consumer are begging for specificity. But as a label or as somebody that is responsible for helping to produce or put out that content, you're begging for mainstream. Mainstream just means let me strip away any specificity so it's palatable to more ears.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really what the concept is.
There's also another component that I think is also important is the financial aspect, right? A lot of these artists, you get the traditional starving artists, right?
Right.
So the record label or whoever comes up with, hey, we're going to give you this advance, right?
Right.
Sounds magical. Just sign here. You've never seen probably a check that big in your entire life, right? So you're like, hey, no problem. I'll sign, right? But they don't understand the repercussions of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The concept behind that is what we just talked about. Like if I'm a record label and I wanted to make you marketable and I sign you to some sort of specific deal, and then during that deal, I'm taking you all the parties, not the P. Diddy parties, I'm taking you all the other kind of parties.
That's another kind of party. That's a whole different party. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Take you to all the places. And I'm helping you get your music right, your life right, your image right. And then let's say you do cut a record and let's say you go gold and sell 500,000 copies.
Yeah.
You really made like $47,000 that year.
Right. And then they're
because
like, oh,
there's a big advance that you got to pay back.
The advance and plus the marketing and plus we also, provided this music video budget.
It's super interesting, but that's also why you see this massive shift from the artists that are in the world. They're doing their own thing now, and that comes with its own issues.
Yeah. So the idea of Fanfare came to you. Did you just want to streamline the process, or what's like the unique feature set that you're providing outside of traditional social media, right? Like why should an artist join Fanfare?
Power.
Power. Okay.
So the interesting thing about our industry is that we are unlike any other industry that's out there. If you are a plumber, you don't want to walk into my house and see another plumber's magnet on my refrigerator, right?
Right.
But if you are a musician and you are a specific kind of musician, I do want to pull up your audio listening or your playlist and see a lot of stuff that looks like me in there, because that means you binge my type of content. That's the same reason why when big artists are touring, they reach out to local bands in the area to bring them because they want to bring people that sound similar to them, because they're going to capture fans that may be the local band's fans that don't yet know about the big name yet.
That's true.
Right? Our industry, exposure equals currency, and togetherness is power. That's what I think Fanfare represents. Is yes, we're social networking, but to a desired end. We're essentially saying that if I've got 1,000 fans and you've got 1,000 fans, together we have 2,000 fans.
Got it. So if I'm connecting the dots correctly, Fanfare is more about making those connections artist to artist, or is it also like fan artist relationship as well?
It's artist to artist, and the reason why it's artist to artist, there's a fan to artist component that comes after, but that's very organic, right?
Yeah.
So on Fanfare, I have the ability to connect with you, and we can essentially what we call fan share, and you can share your content onto my existing sites like Instagram, TikTok, etc., and vice versa. And then my fans will follow you, and your fans will follow me, and then you get a little link from us showing the fruitfulness of the relationship between you and I, and seeing how deep into my fan base that you've been able to penetrate, right? So the whole concept is being able to be in rooms that you don't necessarily have to be in. We're essentially opening for each other on a social network.
That's very cool. So tell me, you made that jump into being an artist, so all of a sudden you're deep into tech. Has it been a cool ride, an enjoyable ride, or is it like, some lessons learned?
Yo, the best lesson I learned was that it is expensive to be cheap.
Yeah.
When I first had this idea, I started like researching. I was like, what does it take to build an app? And I'm a non-technical CEO. And that just means that somebody else does a lot of the build work as far as the technical pieces. And so I was thinking, let me find out how to get this done. But everything I was quoted was like, $150,000.
For sure.
I was like, I'm not doing that. But then I got on like Upwork, and I saw some guy, he was like, I can build it for $5,000. And I was like, yes.
Nice.
What he built was terrible. And the cool part was that the premise made sense. People started falling into it and saying, hey, why is this so bad? Why does this not work? But this idea is great. And so I kept getting people to try to fix it. $20,000 to $30,000 in, I realized we got to ditch this whole thing.
Wow.
And we got to do it the right way. And so like, it's been I bumped my head a lot, but I've actually connected with people in so many amazing ways.
When did you officially launch? Did you have like an MVP or a beta before you officially launched, or walk me through that?
So we're an OSN, or online social network, which just means that we have a chicken and an egg problem, because you have to build your social network. You have to build the actual product at the same time as you build the people who use the product.
Right.
Because if you have a beautiful product and there's tumbleweeds on it,
right?
People will walk on and be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But if you bring a bunch of people like we did at first to something that's bad, they're going to walk in and be like, I'm out. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to recapture somebody's attention after you've lost it.
Right.
So what we've done is that Fanfare is actually more of a movement that just so happens to need a company to do it. Right.
Okay.
And so what we've done is we've built this analog version of Fanfare. We host private mixers in Colorado, Nashville, Los Angeles, and the DFW area, and now Oklahoma. And it's invite only. We only have people, but then I'll also curate the sound. I'll pick specific artists to be able to play that night. We bring free food, free drinks, so it's actually just like a party. But then I will also invite A&Rs and record labels and different people to the spot. So whatever's supposed to happen can happen organically, and people can feel the power of networking, right?
That's cool. So that's an interesting model, because you're almost bringing the industry to a night together so they can do what they need to do, versus having a night for the fans to come and experience the music, right? So walk me through that model. Is there still a performance aspect?
Yeah.
You said you got the A&Rs there. They want to see the talent. How does that work?
It works because I come from a long line. I've been in corporate government sales for the past 15 years. And I understand that when you have a networking event, you go to the networking event with this awkward pocket full of business cards. And you're like, do you want to sit by me so I can see if you can do something for me or not? At one level, everybody knows so what? You know somebody that works with Jay-Z. I mean, everybody knows somebody who works with everybody. But will that person answer when you call their phone? real relationships, real business is still done with people who like you. And so to me, the model just makes sense because it's invite only, which means you're only in the room because you know someone else. So if you get real awkward, just go chill over there with your people, right? But the performance aspect comes up because the people who are there all care about the same thing, right? We're all there because we love music. We love the creation of art and all things involved. And music translates and bleeds into other mediums of creativity. And so it just becomes a fun night that people don't know they're networking. I know they're networking, but they don't know that they're networking. We've had deals get done on the floor at the same time. So.
Nice. And do you have a theme to these nights? Do you have like, hey, I'm going to invite R&B artists to this one versus this one's going to be hip hop based or something? Is that how you curate that?
That's how I curate that. It's usually 3 acts, but then like the third one, I usually do something off the wall. Like I had in Austin, it's still one of my favorites. It was a smaller place. We did it in like a cider house. We only had like 100 people there, but the last act was this band called Open 2.0, and they don't have a lot of like lyricism, what you would think. There's like a violinist. There's so many different instruments. There's a guy that's playing on some hand drums. There's so many amazing things that are transpiring. Those guys are solid, but they were just totally different than the first 2 acts. So it just kind of blows your mind.
That's cool, because then you also give them exposure to an audience that they probably normally would not be in front of, right?
Absolutely.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
What about scaling the app, right? You mentioned that you had some things that didn't work out as great as you thought that they would. What about scaling? Did the app ever crash along the way? Did you have, adoption issues? Walk me through some of the growing pains, if you will.
Yeah. So the answer to both of those questions is yes, but I now don't see that as a bad thing anymore. Because of what we said, there's actually 2 versions of Fanfare. There's Fanfare, the app, then there's Fanfare, the company. Like right now, if you go look for the app, we've pulled it down so we can do some other things with it, but it doesn't stop any of the things that we're doing because Fanfare, the company, still is hosting events. We're still being a part of a lot of big things. We're still getting artists to the places that they need to go because you need both. And then when it's time, when we fix the thing that we want to fix on that, we'll just put it back on there and you'll go back to doing what you're doing from a fan sharing perspective. But the crashes and things of that nature, that's part of tech. That's always going to happen. As soon as Apple updates to their next iOS 1 million, the Cocoa Pods and all the things that are hosting and housing all the information, you're going to have to go back and update everything. So that's going to be a continuous thing. For a startup, apps are very expensive. So we just move how we move.
That's cool. So I was kind of poking around before we got started here on the web portion, and there's like an onboarding process, right? So it almost seems like you have to like put in all your information and you kind of almost get vetted out, right? So walk me through that onboarding process. What's that like? I was like, okay, I'm going to play around with it, but I probably don't want to enter in information here.
Yeah, man, so, I like you. You do your background. I like that. So that's again a great question, and that comes from experience. So the first time that we launched Fanfare, when I said everybody and their mother found it, what we really found out was that we had people that were ranging from spending, significant amounts of money on their craft every month to like. Nothing against SoundCloud rappers, but you can get on SoundCloud at any time you want without any sort of investment in your craft, and you could be garbage. And so you got some guy that's like already buzzing with 15, 20,000 fans, and then some guy that's like, hey, you trying to fan share?
Yeah. He decided he was a rapper yesterday or something, right?
And you get on his track and you're just like, oh, bunnies hopping all around.
Exactly.
Like, this is not okay. So we had to make some level of separation. So there is a vetting process so that we can make sure that the caliber of people on our network are actually musicians. You could throw a dime in there and hit people that say they're a musician, but is that your passion? Do you want to turn your passion into your livelihood?
Got it. So what are some of the metrics that you look at, or is it more just truly artistic and you listen to what they have, their material, to see if they're talented? Or do you also look at, hey, what does their social media look like? Right. What is their recording? What do they sound like? Tell me about the sort of requirements, the metrics that you look at for that onboarding.
Yeah, that's a dual-fold question because, we consider those things, but we're not trying to be a pseudo-label. We're not trying to decide who gets a seat at the table. We want the marketplace to tell you if you're garbage or not. Like, that's not my place. There's a thing for everything. Right. But the reason I do look at those metrics, like, I want to know what you have on Instagram, and I want to know what you have on TikTok. I want to know your streaming. I want to know, just in general, how much content you put out, is because when you're fan sharing with somebody, the music industry has a very negative connotation about being dogmatic or about hurting one another. And so there's a lot of mistrust. So if you're coming to my platform, the only way I can remove that mistrust is by giving you as much information as possible. Yeah. That way I can tell you, hey, this person's fans are verified. They have 3,000 verified fans. If you fan share with them and you guys decide that you want to share content, you're going to be heard by at least 3,000 people. Right. That's what I can tell you.
That's very
important. You make
the
decisions outside of that.
Yeah, that's very important because I definitely have seen that even as being a DJ, people are afraid to collab. People are afraid to share the secret sauce, right? So breaking down that barrier is super important because I don't think it happens, especially in music, right? and
Right.
probably even other industries such as Hollywood, stuff like that. They never want to tell you what they're using, some of the tricks, right? So how do you sort of, besides saying, hey, you're going to get access to these numbers and sort of, I guess, the secret algorithm, what else is the benefit for them to share the secret sauce, if you will?
That's all part of evangelism. So the mixers and the events we do, yeah, they're for fun, but they're also so that I can help people understand the movement. The truth is that we've been lied to about what our power is and how to access it. And I am here to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And the fact is that Fanfare may be a cool and a novel concept or a great idea, but the truth is it doesn't work unless we move together. And so that's what I make sure that people understand is I say, hey, one of the biggest questions I get is, well, what happens if they don't share your fan? Everything we do is mutually beneficial. When you click send, both of those screens pop up on the same time and they send at the same time. Everything we're doing is mutually beneficial. So you don't have to worry about that, because I want people to get back to the understanding that if we move collectively as a group, we will decide how it happens.
Right.
And I think that at the end of each one of these mixing events, I actually get up and I talk about some of the statistics that the artists aren't even aware of. Half of them think that success looks like X. And I say, how do you get there? What does it even look like? And there's no real information, or there's old and antiquated information that hasn't, a part of the music industry hasn't changed in 50 years.
Right.
Right. And so you have to educate people on those aspects, on those fronts, and say, hey, this is how it looks now. And then once people get it, they go move for you. And so you're not fighting against a stigma anymore. You have other people that are saying, oh yeah, no, come to this event. Our first event has 17 people. You know, the last event we did, not the conference, but the last mixer we did in Connecticut had 700 people. So it's just like, it moves in different ways.
Yeah. Do you also plan to do integrations, or do you already have integrations with traditional social media and even like Spotify? Like, I'm thinking all that data is gold, right? So if you have integrations with all that, that's super valuable to have, right?
Right. Absolutely. Every time that you're a startup and anytime you've actually gone to go do any sort of fundraising, that's what they want to know. What's your exit strategy?
Right.
Like, how are you going, if we decide to give you any money, how is it that you become relevant in any way, shape, or form? So we've thought about several exit strategies, and 100% that data is, because as of right now, even the people who are in the music industry, we're not trying to villainize or demonize anybody. Everybody's just trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
And right now, at the highest levels, you can talk to different A&Rs and they'll tell you, man, I spend most of my time perusing TikTok trying to figure out who's buzzing. They don't want to do that either. Right. And so if I can hand them information to say this person has 5,000 verified gold fans and they represent X in monthly revenue, what can you do? Right. Those deals are better for everybody involved. They're better for the people who are cutting the check, and they're better for the people who are asking for the check.
But I would say if you're in a traditional record label, you probably have a different end goal in mind, right? You're not necessarily worried about them building their own fan and being successful. You want them to come on board so you can sort of market them and make money, basically, right? You're running a business at the end of the day.
In a way, but actually I've had a lot of conversations. I'm not allowed to say the names of the people I've conversated with, but at different labels, at some pretty high levels, I've had conversations, and they'll tell you this is the new wave. They understand that the traditional models are a sinking ship, because on one hand, with the rise of the technological revolution also came a way to create and disseminate content at such a high clip that now people can make great music in their garage, which just means that now we're inundated, which just means that if I can't find a way to penetrate and target my exact market in the way that I want to, I'm going to get lost in the sauce. And
Definitely.
So the specificity that people are begging for, independent artists are saying, I'll do it myself. Shout out LaRussell. He's got a great model. Like, I love the way he does his thing, is I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
And it's really been great.
Yeah. So you haven't gotten any pushback from anybody, traditional record labels, stuff like that, when they hear about this? Do you get any pushback on your idea or what?
Man, I'm a nobody.
Yeah.
And so I think that plays to my advantage. I'm a literal nobody. And so when they sit down with me, in every situation, and I always tell people there's no such thing as a free lunch. In every situation, when you sit across from somebody, they're silently assessing you, trying to figure out how much respect to deliver to you. And you can decide that you want to elevate yourself in your mind and in theirs and demand your respect. But I don't think it's the time for that. I think you sit quietly and you try to be effective in any conversation that you're in, and you see what doors open up. And by the time that you are really achieving the things that you want to achieve, you're so relevant that nobody could squash you if they tried.
Yeah. I think what I've noticed with musicians and artists just in general is that they just want to do their art. They just want to perform, right? All the social media, all this growing, all the marketing, like they really don't have any interest in doing that, right? But it almost comes with the territory. You have to do that in order to be successful, right?
Right.
So tell me about that. Like how can an artist do both if really they don't want to do that other piece, right? They just want to get in front of a crowd. They want to perform live, right?
Right. Steve Jobs, I think, said it the best when he said, I don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. I hire smart people so they can tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You have to be a unique individual. And I think that God has just blessed me to where I have an analytical brain. And it's almost as strong as my creative brain. My creative brain definitely takes the cake as far as what I desire and how I spend my time. But as a creative, if I'm in the mode of creation and then I have to go back and crunch all these numbers, I've got to fundraise, I've got to get regulatory things set up, I've got to make sure all my paperwork is in order so I don't get fined for anything. It drowns my creativity. So I would actually tell an artist, don't do that. Okay. And that's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. There's a reason why we exist. Connect with people, tap in on levels that are really, really great. And you can't just sit in your room and make all your music and think I'm perfecting my craft. Right. You have to be visible, but there are easier ways to do that. And it is finding people, finding situations like Fanfare, being in those types of spots and saying, let's go do this thing. Because I know artists, again, that ranging all the way up to the top, they hate this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you become well-rounded if you know how to do it, but it does, a level of it, stifle your creativity.
The opposite side that I see is that a lot of artists get stuck and they depend too much on a social media, whether that be TikTok or Instagram, Facebook. And if that thing goes away, basically their career goes away, right? So
absolutely.
Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I've seen that as well. And here's the thing, though. For as far back as you can go back to Bible days. If things are really, really bad, what do people do? They write a song about it. When things are really, really good, they write a song about it. True. You find a girl that you love more than anything, you write a song about it. The chick that you hate more than anything, you write a song about it.
Yeah.
Music is timeless and it will always be that way. And it's about understanding how to capture what it is you're trying to capture. What I love so much about LaRussell and what I think that it speaks volumes to the rest of the world is he's giving, if you go listen to any of his stuff and go look at like his Instagram, he's giving free game all the time. I actually brought him to Oklahoma City to try to get him to do a conference with people to chat and tell them about how to get put on game.
That would be amazing.
And everybody just kept hitting me up like, is LaRussell going to play? Is he going to play? If you want him to play, buy a ticket to his concert. Like, right. I'm trying to give you the ability to access game, but it's the way that we think. It's like Henry Ford said, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they'd have told me faster horses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of people, and even the SoundCloud rappers, right? Like Post Malone, you see these success stories, but more often than not, you see people that maybe even create buzz on a specific social media, but they can't take those fans and sort of monetize or take them to a different platform, right? They get stuck, right? So do you help with that too? Of like, hey, let's not get, super hyper focused on this social media app. Yeah, you may be killing it on SoundCloud, but to monetize that or to get people to buy concert tickets, it's a whole different story, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Spotify pays 0.003 cents per stream.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how hot you are digitally, unless you found a way to capture that and move forward. My buddy Andre, one of my mentors, what he tells me all the time is that the real hack is consistency over time. Everybody that you see that like really popped off, or people that you think that you watched pop off, you didn't really watch them popped off. Right. That never really happens. Like consistency over time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the anomaly, but people all want to be a unicorn so bad. But sometimes it's nice to just be a magic pony. Like if you can level and hit, if you have 10,000 fans on any social media website and you know how to galvanize that, you can make over 6 figures a year in any city. What does success look like when you think about it as a business? I think part of what hurts us as musicians is we keep adding sex appeal back to what it is that we're doing instead of realizing, okay, this is an industry that's been the fastest growing industry for the past 4 years. How do we view it as a business? And if it is a business, there's not a job in the world where somebody can say, you want to do the thing that you love more than anything and make it within 6% of the entire world's.
Right.
Nobody would say no to that.
And that's an important conversation too, because I think we also need to reframe what success looks like, right? Like a lot of people think success is making 6 figures, driving a crazy, G-Wagon or something. Right. But would you rather be, happy making 50K, doing the thing you love versus being miserable? Yeah, you have this G-Wagon, but someone's telling you, you have to be here at 8, you have to leave here at 6, and I have to approve your PTO.
Right.
Like, which of those, what's success, right?
Right. You absolutely have to do that. I think what's interesting is I used to sell HRBPO, or human resource business process outsourcing. I know that's a lot of words, but it's essentially your human capital is most businesses' greatest expense. And so there's a lot of research that goes into that. And what they found is that when millennials took over the scene, I think that was 5 years ago, millennials took over being the majority in the workplace. They did all these polls and they found out that they would take significantly less money for more vacation time, more flexibility, and better amenities.
I believe that. And the funny thing is companies keep fighting even the remote work stuff, right? And to me, why do you want to limit your workforce to say you have to be in office? If I'm remote, I've got talent all over the world, right?
Absolutely.
I can be super competitive, but you still get all these old school mentality that says, hey, you have to be in office.
Absolutely. Right? And people under 40 change jobs every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So you experience tech. Do you see tech as a tool or do you see it as a threat, right? Because the other thing that's happening within all the creative side is AI, right? And AI is basically disrupting everything from video to social media and especially music, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, at the end of the day, people, I think people sometimes overestimate not themselves and their capabilities. People are capable of anything. They overestimate their level of interest and how far they're willing to go. You got to know how to prompt those things. And then to be really good, it takes a team of people and you got to understand music, period, in order to get to the spot where you're doing that.
Yeah.
And at the exact same time, there's songs that I've written that I thought would be like, oh, this is going to be fire. Everybody's going to love this. People are just like, oh, it's cool. I like it. But then there's songs that I wrote when I was just like going through something and I was getting it off my chest. I got this song called La La, and I was just getting some stuff off my chest. It's really raw. There's no anything to it. People go bananas over that song. And it's because I'm actually saying something about something that transpired in my life. And AI doesn't do that. I mean, you can give it, you can prompt it and tell it the best that you can, but there's something, think about it for a second. I mean, even harmony is mathematical. Music is how we talk to God in the space around us.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that AI is always going to be missing that human component, and no matter how good it is, it's going to be difficult to compete with the real human.
Yeah, I mean, fast forward, go fast forward 50 years, 75 years in the future, and all songs are AI, and people are bopping and doing their thing, and everything is like super amazing. You can set the scene in your mind, but then there's one guy that's got a Gibson guitar that his dad gave to his dad, and it's just sitting in the corner, and somebody grabs it and starts playing it. What happens in that room?
Right. And you always hear about the rock stars that popped off are the ones that basically didn't know how to play. They broke the rules. They didn't know how to read music.
Right.
They may be playing the guitar bad, quote unquote, but then they come out with a different sound, right?
Right.
And everybody goes crazy for it, right?
Right. It's 100% what transpires. I'm not classically trained. Yeah. And so a lot of times I'll be in the studio and like my buddy Johnny will be like, how in the world that's an advanced concept. I don't know what the concept is. That's just what my head
It just sounds good, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting where it's headed because even in the podcasting space, I've seen where a host can record basically a few, hours of their voice and the AI can create podcasts for them, right? So from a creator perspective, you can see that it's going to disrupt everything. If people want to say, hey, I don't even want to record a podcast, let AI do it. And it's crazy to imagine, but there's people already doing that.
There's people that are doing that, but the same people that are doing that are the same people who would create a podcast without AI. That's essentially what I'm saying is like tech will always change. And if you go look at history for the music industry alone, the way you do it will change left, right, and center. CDs, but the people who actually are sitting at the table, they don't change because they're the ones that care enough anyways to learn how to make AI do that, to get to that spot, to even podcasting, what you're doing now. Like if you go and you download, there's a free podcast service of the Apple operates. And if you think you got enough cool stuff to say and you got a pair of headphones, you can actually get on your phone and you can make a podcast.
Yeah.
You got a much better setup here, but you also started from a spot of being like, I'm going to start just doing my thing.
Yeah. I mean, the barrier to entry right now for, I think, any type of creative, super low. I mean, you can create a whole song on your phone as well, right?
Right.
I've had several guests on the podcast that they just started on their phone, and then before they know it, they've gone into an actual studio. They've had their first concert.
Right.
So it's a good way to proof out, like, hey, do I even want to go this route? So for me, tell me what's sort of the feature sets that I get being a member of FanFair. What are some of the things that I get out of it?
Yeah, being part of FanFare, you're a part of a private community. So we call ourselves a private social network for that purpose. You get access to all the events that we do. You don't have to worry about the closed door events or different things that pop up because you get access to kind of our family. It's like a fraternity. You get access to our closed networks as well, like our contact list and we have a lot of, we partner with Full Sail. We partner with like University of Connecticut, but we also partner with a lot of smaller venues in different places so we can kind of get you tapped in that way. But the app itself, what you really get is the ability to increase the amount of people who know who you are without having to play in that room.
Okay.
Right. And so we're actually using our pairing algorithm to match you with people that sound enough like you to where we're kind of doing the legwork for you and saying your fans will probably like each other. Right. And so just trying to grow it that way and just bring you into the fold.
Have you already seen some quick wins that have come out of it? Have you have some success stories with different artists? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that transpired, and these people, I want to be careful not to ever try to make myself a hero in somebody else's story, because like I said, consistency over time is the greatest hack. These people were already buzzing and doing great things. But one of my favorites is there was this girl that played in Colorado. We had this whole place. It was really, it was on a Tuesday night. We do all of our mixes on these random weeknights. You know, it's just stuff that we like to do. But it was in this beautiful location where they do runway model stuff. And it was just like, everything was great. Night was going really well. The first two artists were fantastic, but I knew that this girl was going to knock people's socks off. That's why I had her last. And so she goes and she starts knocking people's socks off. And I'm sitting next to a man that owns a studio and a man that owns a label. And they both immediately just like, hey, what's going on? Who's that? And I'm like, oh yeah, where? Yeah. That's Bunny. Let's go talk. And so we go over there and they immediately were super excited about what it was that she was doing. And I've continued to see nothing but great stuff from her since then and from the people that were around her. And the people who came to that event, I've seen several projects they've released since that day. And I loved it.
That's cool. What about, coming out with a sustainable business model from an artist's perspective? Are you also gearing towards that as well, or what?
Yeah, eventually we want to be like the QuickBooks for the musician. Mm-hmm. Because as we talked before, if a musician tries to lean into this understanding of the business world, they're going to suffocate the elements of themselves that really need to thrive. So let us do that. You focus on being really good, because if we open all those doors and the marketplace tells you you're trash, that's you. Like nobody can do anything with that. The market said you weren't good.
Lessons that you've learned. You always hear, like you said, you always see the end goal, right? You always say, hey, this guy just made it. It's success overnight, but they don't see the late nights, the struggle. What are some of the lessons you've learned?
I think the lesson that I've really learned is that you've never arrived. Mm. There's going to be high moments and there's going to be really low moments. And there's been moments as a grown man where I just sat there with my head in my hands and cried, like dead serious, no joke. And it's because these things are so heavy. And if it doesn't feel like that at times, then you're probably not doing anything that really matters.
Right.
If I'm being honest, like if there's not times where it feels like that you're on top of the world, it's like lightning in a bottle. And there's other times where you're just like, God, if I'll never get into this again, if you pull me out right now, I'll never do it again. And you have to celebrate the victories, big or small, and you have to be incredibly accountable for your failures. When you lose, learn and be accountable for that. Hold that. That was you. Be better next time.
Yeah, I'm going to geek out a little bit on the software side. So are you following more of a traditional agile approach where you're, doing iterative development, you're getting feedback, you're doing quick releases? Like what kind of methodology are you doing with your release of the software? Maybe walk me through that, how you do that. How do you incorporate input?
So we do everything kind of so we code in React Native. So it's in that scenario, we're just trying to make sure that we can release on both platforms and take everything that everybody's talking about as we go. But in reality, we just have these small test groups. That's why I love the fact that Fanfare exists in two different, in the digital world and in the physical world, because they don't have to hold hands all the time.
Okay.
And so what we do is we have these really small test groups, and you may not hear anything about Fanfare, the app, for 6 months, but you've gone to 3 different events, right, at the exact same time. And then we pull from those events and we let it be completely volunteer. So if you come to an event, you have to use sometimes the app to even like scan in or different things like that. So we'll say, hey, do you want to be a part of the next beta when we release this? Or hey, do you want to be a part of this thing? We've done a ambassador program where we send people to Mexico. That was kind of fun to do. But as a startup, you have to figure out ways to like stretch your dollar really far. And that comes from people who are invested in what you're doing already. So we have test groups that will kind of tag in. The biggest test group that we've done feedback from, and it's been 300, but it's been typically after we're ready to do another build. That's
interesting. So the ambassador group, is that more traditional, like you would hear from a record label, like a street team, right? They're sort of like the promoters of this app.
Right.
Is that what you consider your ambassadors or what?
Right. Yeah, that's 100% what we consider our ambassadors, because the person you're trying to get a hold of when you're in the early stage is not the person you're trying to get a hold of when you're in full scale development. They're the people that are okay with your stuff being garbage, right? I don't know if people saw Airbnb's first app, but it wasn't like the best thing in the world, but you could book somebody's property. Right. And so the people you're looking for in the beginning are people that are okay with understanding that they're a part of what you're doing, and bring them in on that.
I like that. So what have you seen as far as the artists? Do they struggle? Like once they're approved, they're part of Fanfare. Do they struggle to keep that relationship ongoing, or is it seamless? Like you said, they sign up for the app, but they don't necessarily need to stay on top. Like it's not like one more app that I have to keep track of, right?
That's kind of a dual-fold question, because again, we want to kind of fade into the abyss, not from the app's perspective. We want the app to be a justifiable ongoing business tool that you use to do what it is that you're doing. But like I said, we take the app off. We're hoping to get to a spot, we get some cash in the door, and somebody is gonna fund it. We'll throw the app on there, and of course it'll be something that stays on there through the different developments and changes that we do as we go forward. But as of right now, it's one of those things to where we're not trying to be the hero of your story. We want you to understand what it means to have a fan base, and then you own that, and you go forward and you market that. You start making the best business decisions that you can. Distribution is already taking you to a place where you can do that as an independent artist. And we're just trying to give you the tools to say, if you want to go with a label, now you have a much better playing card than you had before. And if you want to go independent, now you have a much better path forward in having a justifiable business.
On your roadmap, do you have also the integration of the fan aspect as well? Or do you think you want to just keep it on this other side of the artist development, exposure, making that network?
Yeah, fan thing is coming.
Yeah.
Fan thing is coming big time. Yeah, the fan thing is coming because that's a whole group within themselves. How many times do you have the same three buddies that just like, they want to make sure they put you onto the new music. Oh, I'm the one that showed him that. There's people that are just sitting there browsing SoundCloud trying to find the best, the biggest, somebody that hits them the heaviest. And so we're definitely going to add a fan sharing, or fan facing portion of this where they can pay a fee and get behind a paid wall to the people that they love the most.
Yeah, I like that, because even if you had sort of like a super fan component, you can get access to that data, and you can say, hey, you've got a big following in Oregon. You better do a live show in Oregon, right? We've seen all these streams over here. Like all that data would be super valuable, I would think, for an artist. It's
super valuable for a label. It's super valuable for, booking agent, anybody. All that information is really.
That's cool. So tell me a little bit. What are the goals for Fanfare? What do you plan to do this year? Short-term goals, and maybe, like you said, long-term, get that fan integration.
Yeah, I think short-term goals is to find enough funding to where we can have a 3-year runway without slowing down. It's a big goal for us. But then outside of that, we have a couple of larger events that we want to get taken care of, where we're partnering with some other people that are already renowned in the space. And so we just really want that to go well. But beyond anything, my goal is the same as it is with everything. I just want to be a good steward of the gifts that I'm given. If God says to move left, I want to move left. And if it's right, I want to move right.
That's awesome. So I'm going to give you the stage to plug in. If I'm an artist, how do I get plugged in? How do I become part of Fanfare? Plug in your socials, plug in anything you want right now.
So I would say to keep in touch with all the things that we're doing, probably the best thing is our Instagram. We spend probably the most time doing that, and it is at FANFAIR_APP.
Okay.
Fanfare app is where we are on Instagram. If you go to fanfareapp.com, that's where you'll see our website. And whenever we do new events, or you want to buy a ticket to an event, then that's kind of how to get tapped in with us. But also there's like 3 of us that run the social media part. So if you DM us, we will respond.
Awesome.
And so we'll be able to tell you what you need to know. And if you want to play at an event, I would say tap in with us and send us your content, because we're always doing contests for artists that are growing and trying to get you to the right spots.
Very cool. If I'm early stage artist, should I work on my craft a little bit before I submit to Fanfare, or do I just submit and let you guys be the judge?
Yeah, not at all, because we're not here to tell you if you're good or not, or if you're polished or not. We're not here to tell you anything. We're here to give you the opportunity to keep moving in the direction you're trying to move.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's been awesome. I think definitely you need to come back once you get this, more integrations, more success stories. Anytime you want to swing by the Maverick Podcast, it's always here. Open door policy.
Man, thank you so much for having me. This place is amazing. I love being on it. I love listening to the podcast. Big fan, so I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, the super talented Micheal Ude on the Maverick Podcast. Keep grinding, because in dreams we trust.